Model titled The Role of Space Policies. My name is Victoria Valdivia. I am political scientist and Master International Studies. I'm from Chile. I am currently a mentor into the Network of Space for Women initiative. Also, I'm Partners and Program Manager at World Space Week Association. In this time, we will talk about the role of public policies, and we will start this discussion giving a definition about a public policy. A public policy is what the government chooses to do or not to do. It is a decision made by government to either act or not act in order to resolve a problem. Public policy is a course of action that guides a range of related action in a given field. They rarely tackle one problem, but rather deal with clusters of entangled and long-term problems. Public policies provide guidance to government and accountability links to citizens. Decisions making is clouded by values rather than based purely on objective data. Most issues tend to involve deeply held values, interest, and large amount of money, making the policy process very complex. This definition is taken from McKay and Shackstone studies that is available in the Google academic databases. So, the public policies are formulated through a complex process of interactions between the stakeholders, popularly known as the government, and the civil society, in order to detect and to solve public issues. This process is called policy making and aims to propose a course of actions, decisions, or determine key actions in order to solve the public issue. The cycles of policymaking involves the following actors. First, the government. Understand as the actor that keep the social control of behaviors and has the power of coercion over the society. Then the cabinet. The cabinet has a monopoly over the supply of legislation, locus of power, so few people make decisions. Well, government and cabinet are deeply related in order to make possible the actions related with the governability. Then we can find the public servants. They have the technical knowledge and policy advisors. They are also service providers. So, the public servants advise to the government or to the cabinet in order to deliver a specialist knowledge about some aspect of public problems. Then we found the political parties. Political parties develop relationships in exchange for political support. Political parties can detect needs in the society and they make it visible this need for the government. Then we found the media. The media report information to the public, generate interest, and shape the public opinion. The media can generate public agenda. It means that the media has the power to impact in what are thinking the people or what kind of things will be more important in the near future for the society. Then we found the interest groups. The interest groups seek to advance interest of members, can have a major influence, and can force policy network to react. The role of interest groups the majority of them are related with economical interest, but they can also have political interest or even cultural interest, a social interest, among others. Then we found the legal system. The legal system interprets the laws and in the most of country acts independently. It means that the rule of law must be apart from political influence or other ways of coercion about the legal system over the legal system. Then we can talk about the public. Public are the elect governments. It forms opinions, joins intergroups and coalitions, and relies on the media for information. The public are the actors that compose the government. Is commonly related with the figure of the political service. So, about the public issues of outer space activities. As you can see, with the beginning of the space era, in the context of Cold War, states involved in outer space activities aimed to acquire new capabilities in order to improve their national power. In this context, as the domain of outer space became into a national goal by themselves, states developed public policies in order to generate some national actions according with the reach of the goal. This primary goal was operate into outer space. Of course, this kind of measure observed a major impact because by the formulation of the space policy, each state reached their national society, changing the cultural models and making relevant the national space activities. A good example of this is the United Nations. With their first space policy, they make visible and relevant for the society, for the media, for the public opinion, for interest groups, and also for the government, the need to go and to lead the space career, also to want this space career. And that was possible because in the first space policy that developed the government of the United States said that outer space was a national interest. In a very short time, the outer space became into a public issue, and the public policies started to cover this new dimension, allowing to states to generate governability of the process relating with their own space development and national adequation of this. It's not a coincidence that all space nations observe this process of policy making into space affairs in the very early years of their national space activities. Also, we can talk about the first formulation of a space policy from Europe or from the actual Russian Federation. But if we can research and we can search in the history, we will find that space policies is a constant element in the space history of the principal space nations, even in the case of China. The end of the Cold War allowed the entry of new space actors. This was possible because in a very early stage of development of a space race, states note that the benefits of outer space activities goes beyond the conflict aspect and will impact in the human life and consequent with that, in the possibilities of developing countries for improve their capabilities in order to reach human development. So, with the explosion of new space treaties and international agreements making relevant the operation in outer space and the creation of capabilities relating with that, new states become into part of the selected group of a space nation, and also started with a policy making process related with outer space national activities. But why? Why the new actors made relevant to count with this kind of instrument? Well, it's simple. Because it allowed the social legitimation of the national activities. Relevant issue for a developing country who must maximize their economic capabilities, and because through these instruments the traditional space power could generate measures of transparency and mutual confidence, keeping low levels of uncertainty on the international system about the real intention of new space actors. So, the development of outer space activities in the context of the state domain is related to the formulation of specific public policies that allows and define the scope of national outer space activities. With the evolution of technologies and applications relating to outer space activities, the policy-making process evolved in matter of formulation of the public issue of outer space. If in the beginning the great public issue was the access for national long-term space activities, with the decrease of entry barriers to outer space, the public issues evolved in order to define problems relating with the use of space benefits for improved particular areas of the governmental action, like, for example, the economic field or educational matter related with some outer space principles. So, in general terms, space policies is a political decision making of an state in order to use and exploit space benefits in order to solve public issues. As a governmental response, the space policy is a dynamic process and has the potential to transparent the intentions and potential uses of space benefits. Also can reveal the grade of accomplishment of a state actor with the legal international frame of space activities. To come with this kind of instrument allows to a state to establish a clear route and identify those goals that are necessary to give social profitability to national space programs. A good space policy will allow the formulation of current space planning, programs, and projects that will contribute with the reach of strategic goals for the state by their national space operations. In absence of this kind of instrument, it's difficult for the governmental level to identify the responsibility for national space activities or even the need to conduct it. This is a great challenge because in the case of developing countries, government must prioritize those areas of development in order to make a rational use of their own resources, keeping a fragile balance between public issues and desired tools to solve them. About the policy-making process relating with outer space activities. Well, the space policies in first time are public policies. And in this way, space policies has the particularly to be able to set the way in which the state will implement international treaties. So, we can observe that the contemporary process of policy making in this field is deeply connected with the formulation of international instruments regulating outer space activities as well. In this sense, As the legitimacy of outer space international system increase with the addition of new actors observing the existing rules, the formulation of new instruments of public policies must stress this international frame, recognizing the principles of outer space activities and linking it with the non-binding norms. So, in this way, it's common that the new space policies will, will be making into the current international system regulating the outer space activities from a state. It's not a common situation that a new space actor are willing to define their own space policy aside from the principles regulating outer space activities or even apart from the international treaties on space activities. Also, the process making of space policies could be inspired by the historical experience of other states using their models in order to develop their own public policies. So, the space policies also contribute to improve the governance of outer space activities and to stress the role of international organizations in this area. This is possible because, with the knowledge of the national space policy regulating the national development of space activities, international organizations can analyze the role or uses that every actor expected. Also, in the definition of public issues relating with outer space activities, international organizations can detect in early stage the emergence of new models about the understanding of general terms like space benefits, or where are the interests of international actors, where are the principal risks with the prospective activities, and if it's a full accomplishment or not with international principles and instruments on outer space activities. At the same time, it's fundamental for international organizations to contribute with the creation of capabilities on space policy, because this relation will allow the early education of new space actors about the international system of outer space activities, contributing to strengthen the role of multilateral forums and decreasing the uncertainty levels. In consequence, making more stable the international scenario and relations between space actors. About the need to improve information access related with national space policies, we can say that one great international issue, or maybe one great public international issue, is related with the space policy. With the space policy is related with the capability that exists, that currently exists on international system to access to this kind of instruments. This is because many states consider that the information contained into a space policy has the potential to affect the national security and national interest, or sometimes because they don't have the willing to make it public. These challenges make difficult to improve measures of transparency and mutual confidence. For that reason, it's important that international organisms inspire to their members, to the states, to make public these kinds of instruments in order to contribute with the information that will reduce the possibility of emergence of an international conflict relating with a misunderstanding of the will of a state with a specific outer space operation or a specific kind of development that could increase the risk for a third state. In that way, it's this is a call for international organization in order to prove the international access to national space policies in basis on the current principles on outer space activities and under the scope of international collaboration and cooperation for make a safety and a secure outer space scenario for all the humankind. Well, now we will talk about some guidelines for the policy making process related with outer space for new actors. In order to start a fructiferous policy making process, it's a good idea to keep in mind the answer to the following question. Why we need an outer space policy? Who will be impacted by the outcomes of the instrument? Which public issue will be resolved by the formulation of this policy? Which scope will have the instrument? Will be a local instrument, governmental, or international instrument? Is it according with the international policy of the state? Because it's very important that as a public policy, the space policy must be coherent and consistent with the definition of international policy of the actor. We can't say in a space policy this state will contribute to generate a peaceful space environment, and on the other hand, through their national international policy, the same state declares that they are not willing to cooperate at any international level. So it's necessary to improve the mutual confidence and the transparency into international relations that the state must observe some levels of coherence between different policy instruments. The formulation of the policy making process of an outer space policy must involve the major actors in the same process, particularly those civil actor or interest group, in order to increase the legitimacy of the instrument. In the international perspective, we count with some experience where the policy making process of a specific space policy was generated without the contribution and without the participation, for example, of society or the media. So even the state developed the public policy, but the policy wasn't implemented because the policy wasn't relevant for the needs of the state, for the interest of the stakeholders of the government, because was out of the scope of the media, and in fact wasn't relevant for other people apart from the team that make this policy. So in that sense, it's very very strange, because we can say that no matter the title of the instrument of the document, this case is not a public policy on is not a space policy as well in formal terms, because the document doesn't define a public problem, and even the document can't impact to the society, to the national society. So it's very important this thing about the legitimacy that observe the document. Well, Also, we must take into account the international experience in order to prevent unnecessary travels. Also, you can ask for help from international community, from the service of certain advisors, international advisors on this field, in order to create capabilities related with this process. The policy making related with the space policy is a national decision process, so it can't be influenced by a third state. But it doesn't mean that the state that want develop their own space policy can't receive transference of knowledge or advisory service from a third state or from an international organization. Also, we must always write the policy in simple terms. A good public policy must be understood by any citizen of the country and in different levels. So, less is more. A clear and strong policy aims to set principles, problems, and solutions, not to create an elevate document for political elite. So, if you have a clear space policy, you will have clear goals, a clear public issue, and you will be clear with the expected outcomes from the implement of the space policy. How to set in the space as a public issue? First, to formulate adequate public issue is fundamental in order to develop a successful space policy. So, some suggestions in the definition of the problems are: first, a public issue must impact the life of national society. It means that involves thousands of people or different communities inside the country. The space problem that you want to solve by the instrument is a public problem. That is the first question related with this aspect. Sometimes some interest groups want to make us believe that their own interests are public problems, are public issues. But a real public issue will impact the life of thousands of the citizens in the country. Two or more civil communities inside the country. So involves the life of a lot of people, not only one sector of the society. Also, we must think about the problem. The problem is connected with other public problems. If it's connected, how space will contribute with possible solutions to those other problems. If we define a public issue that is connected with other public issues, probably we will find more arguments in order to use the space benefits, because we can solve more one public issue at the same time with some space action as well. So this makes more relevant the role of the national space activities and contributes to make a big impact in the society. The third question is: do you count with the necessary infrastructure and organization in order to conduct the necessary actions to solve the problem? This is very important because we can make, for example, in a non-space nation, a space policy that aims to develop the first lunar mission of this country. But if you don't have the necessary infrastructure, for example, the knowledge basis on the governmental levels, on the media, on the social levels, you can't materialize the action needed in order to reach your goal. So in this way, this is a call to define public issues related to outer space in basis of your local qualities about your own particulars related with your culture, with your history, with your own needs. It's very easy to copy the definition of space public problems from space nations. But this problem was identified by this state for looking into their own society. And this kind of difference could impact in the in the improvement of the outer space activities that the society will generate. So it's very important to keep in mind who are we, what we have, what we can do, what we want to do, and how we will create the future, how we will reach our goals in the future, what we need to solve in first term. Well, in general terms, there are some basic elements in the formulation of a space policy. For example, it's very common that in the formulation of space policy, a state declares the principles of outer space activities that inspires the national space activities of the state. Then it's common to make a definition of the public issue related with outer space. For example, through the space policy, the state of pencil case aims to reach a high level of scientific development and knowledge related with celestial bodies in order to prevent future attacks from other civilizations. Um, that could be a definition, for example. Sorry. Then they define the scope for a public policy. This is important in order to make a clear document and implement this document in the better way. Then we can find a state declaration about their own understanding about outer space and their goals in this field. States always will be observing goals in related with outer space activities. They want to reach something, to maybe to improve their own international position, to improve international cooperation, to improve factors related with human development or human security, etc. Also, it's common to find actions or areas involved in the national space activities. For example, short declaration about the role of the economic field, the diplomatic, cultural, education, etc., etc., etc. It will depend of the level of definition that the state wants to make public into the formulation of this kind of documents. Well, as final comments of the future of outer space policies. Outer space policies are very relevant to prospect the future of outer space activities. In that way, it's very important to keep a permanent observation of the new process of policy making related with the emergence of new space actors. They help us to determine possible futures in basis on national information provided by the state. So they are a good fund for information, for direct information, and for analysis on the intentions, on the discourse making process of a state as international actor. Also, they contribute to measure the potential problems or principal interest areas in the outer space activities. So, through the analysis of space policies, we can find some elements relevant to make visible coming problems about the outer space activities. For example, the worry about the space rise or long-term sustainability terms that states aims to implement or that state recognizes as relevant through a national document that in that way represent the intention and state declaration on outer space activities. Also, there is a huge need in order to improve the access of information and analysis of space policies and behavior of states. In that way, it's very relevant what we can do as advisor from different levels and in different countries in order to promote the formulation of public space policies, public in the way of make it public the document. Maybe we can develop some non-binding norms related to the compromises of a space nation or a state member from the United Nations in order to make available the information related with outer space activities into this kind of document, a kind of repository that allows the generation of knowledge, generation of mutual understanding, and in that way to improve security and peace into outer space dimension. So I want to thank you to all for attending this class on outer space polity, and I cordially invite you to research more about it. And if you want, you can Google my name, and you will find my research papers related with this subject, with this area of knowledge. So I also to share it with your colleagues, with your relatives, with everyone, because we need to raise the awareness about the role and the relevance of outer space policy in order to improve the outer space security and peaceful use. Thank you so much.